But I've seen couple of startups, not couple, at least two, I won't name them, that the whole idea failed because they didn't think about security. Their application was down for 3 days and they lost all the customer base. Then they had to rebrand, and now I don't know that. A lot of people have implemented it, but they don't know how to scale on the cloud, right? So when you're starting a small workload, it makes sense, right? You're able to do a quick POC, it's always running. If you have to provision something, you don't need to go through the change control.
Correct.
You don't need to go through the procurement cycle, and it takes 3 months for a server to come or a device to come. So obviously it's very fast, right? But you should know how to control that agility, right? If you don't have controls, you can just go and burn money in if not days, even hours, right? My own shipments, right? So if you're doing 30,000 booking a day, every booking would have about 90 to 100 packets.
Correct.
Right? So that's millions of packets that we're moving. And if you take a transit window of 3 to 5 days, then you multiply that by 5. That's the kind of inventory that's there in the system, right? Whether it's on a vehicle on a road or it's lying in a transit hub to be loaded in the next 24 hours. So there's a massive amount of data. So from obviously there's a lot of AI that can play a role, and which we are leveraging very deeply to make sure that our forecasting models, whether it's the forecasting of how do we do the buying, or how do we provision the selling for our customers, right? How do we provision the freight? How can we predict that better? Data, and how do we make changes to it very frequently? So we've got 600 changes a year, right? So the whole system is always in a state of flux. What is enough in security is very hard to define. No one can define that, right? Because you've seen Microsoft's getting hacked, and you've seen Facebook's getting hacked.
Cybersecurity company.
Right? And they spend billions, right? So it's not a function of money. It's not a function of talent. I think it's like one of those things, right? If you lose one gap in the system and the hacker is smart enough to penetrate, then no matter what you're doing, you just kind of really not protected. But again, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything.
Welcome to yet another episode of In Conversation. Today we have Mr. Kapil Mahajan, Global Chief Information and Technology Officer, IT, Allcargo Logistics, where he would highlight the ever-evolving landscape of logistics as digitalization has become a cornerstone for success. Mr. Mahajan would talk on the exclusive insight into Alcargo Group's wavering commitment to innovation and shed light on how the group is harnessing state-of-art technology to elevate service, exemplify a dedicated to advanced logistic practice, and consistently rising the bar for service quality. Okay. Welcome to the podcast, Kapil.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So, Kapil, tell me your journey so far. More of a professional, unprofessional front, because technology has evolved for the last 10-15 years predominantly. So, how you have seen that?
So on a professional front, I've been in this technology business for over 2 decades now. Started as a game programmer, then worked with IBM for almost a decade and a half. Mostly in all global accounts, top 100 Fortune 500 companies. And then, had my stint with logistics with an Indian express company. Felt it's an interesting space to be, because until then I had always been a cross-sector guy. So from working with customers like Airbus to Pfizer to Shell to American Express. So it was multi-domain for me, and I felt that now is time to stick to a domain. And that's where I fell in love with the whole supply chain. And then currently I'm with Allcargo. So there we do a lot of movements through the shipping liners as well. So a very interesting space to be. And the best part, I think, from a technologist perspective is that every technology that is there or possibly is going to come out is going to be relevant, right?
So as far as I know, shipping is one of the oldest business that we have, and a lot of global business relying on shipping, especially movement of containers. So how they are, using technology, the newest technology, to improve business operations? Any case study you want to share?
Yeah, right. So we basically, what we do is we are into the business of LCL, other than FCL, which is a different line of business for us. So when you're moving less than container loads, you have to commit on capacity. So if I'm operating on multiple trade lanes, so I say from say Mumbai to France, right? I am committing, say 10,000 TUs, right? So maybe 200 containers. Now, once you've committed it, then you have to find customers to fill those containers, right? Because every space left is revenue loss for you. So in terms of technology, how do you commit on it? Because it's very predictive in nature, right? I have to predict my demand or forecast my demand and then commit on the capacity, right? And I have to look at the current patterns of demand and then.
Correct.
So obviously there's a lot of AI that can play a role, and which we are leveraging very deeply to make sure that our forecasting models, whether it's the forecasting of how do we do the buying, or how do we provision the selling for our customers, right? How do we provision the freight? How can we predict that better, right? Because every container space lost is a revenue loss for us, right? And again, it's a very low margin business. So revenue loss means has a big impact, right? So I think that's a space where we use a lot of these advanced technology. If you look at technologies like IoT, that's also used very deeply, whether it's express business, which is the surface where we track the vehicles, we know when a vehicle has entered a geofence, we know when a vehicle has been allocated to a gate, so the scanning can start. So all the operations have now become very technology centric, and I think that's how it's going to converge. And probably in the next decade or so, you'll have very few players who are going to consolidate and become big players. If I talk about India, right now there is no player, whether it's Gati or our competitors, that have even 2% of the market share, because it's still very unorganized. Right?
Okay.
So I see that pivoting into a more organized market, a more mature market.
And how much play of technology you see in this market? Because you say the market leader are lower single digit. So how much technology is going to play in consolidation?
I think technology is already playing a massive role. So if I look at it, the operations, I've seen the operations in this business being done on a piece of paper, right? So you have a printout of what's in a truck, and then as you're unloading it, you're checking it out, right? To now becoming a totally digital business where you just scan the packets and the system knows what's coming in, and when you're loading a vehicle, system knows what needs to go out and what have you really loaded. So it can ask you to to go look for material that you were supposed to load but have not loaded, right? So, and then there is a whole play around command centers. So getting a centralized visibility into how the whole operations are happening. So if you have 7,000 trucks, just GPS monitoring it individually becomes a nightmare, right? So you have to have solutions that can scale, that can help in centralization, that can help in creating more processes for the organization to get better.
Any use case you'd like to share where use of technology has saved, let's say, time, operations, or let's say money? Any case study?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So I think if you we can start with infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah.
So I've been I think for the last more than a decade now, I've been speaking about CAMS, which is clouds, analytic, mobile, social, and security, right? Being the 5 fundamental pillars of technology, or for any company to kind of grow, right? And if we start with infrastructure or start with cloud, so for the current organization, for EQ, we operate in 6 data centers globally, right? Because of the distributed nature of business, we operate in 180 countries. We run our ERP that's running in most of the countries. So how do we manage this data, and how do we make changes to it very frequently? So we've got 600 changes a year, right? So the whole system is always in a state of flux.
600 changes a year is like one change, like 2 changes
a day. Yeah. So we don't do it on a daily basis. Sometimes it's So, and that's the nature of business, because when you're moving goods, you have a lot of the compliances that come into play, right? So you like India rolled out e-waybill. India rolled out e-invoicing. Similarly, you have these kind of mandates globally in every country.
Correct.
You're integrating with ports. So ports have regulatory requirements, right?
And every port must have a different regulatory environment.
Exactly. So either you are directly interfacing, or you're interfacing through a third party, or you're running an EDI interface, right? So there's a lot of turbulence. And the nature of business is like that. Any business for that matter. So if we look at the data center piece on the cloud side, that's a migration that we will complete in December. I think it'll bring about $10 million of saving in a period of 5 years.
Oh wow!
So that's a big win. We're moving to public cloud. Obviously, we've hardened the security aspect, so the vulnerability and all is taken care of. So because we are really crazy about security after the attack that had happened a couple of years back. Fortunately, not during my time. So that's a big infrastructure upgrade that we're doing. Obviously, there are a lot of other projects where we're looking to leverage cloud where it makes sense, where there is ROI, right, of doing it. And then if I come to application side of it, then if I take example of Express, for example, let's start with the Express business. So there we use there's a use of analytics that is more predictive and prescriptive, which means that when I'm getting all this massive amount of data from the IoT devices and my own shipments, right? So if we're doing 30,000 booking a day, every booking would have about 90 to 100 packets.
Correct.
Right? So that's millions of packets that we're moving. And if you take a transit window of 3 to 5 days, then you multiply that by 5. That's the kind of inventory that's there in the system, right? Whether it's on a vehicle on a road or it's lying in a transit hub to be loaded in the next 24 hours. So there's a massive amount of data. From GPS devices, every few minutes we get a ping. So if a truck is moving, we're moving thousands of trucks are on the road at any point of time, right? So how do you deal with that madness, right? So we've created a platform where it ingests all this data. It predicts what can happen, right? So if there's a delay in a truck because we see that a truck is halted for a long time and it's going to miss the SLA, right? So every vehicle that we have operates like airlines.
Okay.
There's a hub and spoke model, which means that it's going from Delhi to say Mumbai. Then there is a transit time given to the vendor.
Correct.
Right? And if he complies, he gets the full payment. If he doesn't, then there is penalties and all of that. And with the GPS traceability, we're able to predict that, right? And we know that this vehicle is not going to arrive on time. And then there is a transit vehicle that needs to go out of Mumbai because these loads that are coming are safe for Nasik.
Correct.
Right? So we have a window of say 4 hours to load and move.
Unload.
Right? But can I halt that vehicle for half an hour because we are now expecting this vehicle to come in so that the shipments can move into that vehicle and the customer, the SLA is saved by a day. Because if we don't move it in the vehicle, then we lose 1 day. Because there are transit times in which a truck can enter a city and leave a city, right? Which is generally.
So how much time you're like man hours maybe you're saving? Any
So if we quantify, I think with the productivity aspect, we save about 15 to 20%.
Okay, wonderful.
Right? And then also we use these algorithms to predict the use of market vehicles. So a lot of times we have our own vehicles, over 5,000 trucks, for example. But then when there are peak loads, depending on how the bookings are being done, instead of that prediction being given to the local office or the hub to decide how many market vehicles to engage, can we predict that? So when we are able to predict it, we are able to get better rates from the vendor. It's like if I call up a truck driver now and say, hey, I need a vehicle in 2 hours, versus I call him 2 days back and tell him I need it after 2 days.
Correct.
Can we negotiate the rate? Right? So we don't have to compromise on the kind of vehicle also. Sometimes you don't get the vehicle in the last minute. The container has leakage, a lot of other things and then we have to compromise sometimes, right? So I think that is a little untangible, a little difficult to quantify. But those benefits are also being unlocked because of these initiatives.
One of the things you pointed out that there are a lot of migration, like you're doing migration to cloud, but there was discussion also that there are a lot of companies who are moving back to premise solution. So at what time you realize that it is time to move on cloud or it is time to move back to the premise?
So I think interesting question. So cloud is not cheap. Let me put it that way. Yeah. So I think a lot of you should know how to use the cloud, right? Because it's like an unlimited tap. If you leave the tap on.
Even a lot of people also complain that whenever you have like let's say let's put a figure like 100 cloud you have like this 100, and overall that effectively you're using only maybe 40 or 30% or maybe
Exactly.
50% of the capacity best.
Exactly.
So 50% is not used. So
Correct. So that's exactly the point. I was coming to that. That a lot of people have implemented it, but they don't know how to scale on the cloud, right? So when you're starting a small workload, it makes sense, right? You're able to do a quick POC. It's always running. If you have to provision something, you don't need to go through the change control.
Correct.
You don't need to go through the procurement cycle, and it takes 3 months for a server to come or a device to come. So obviously, it's very fast, right? But you should know how to control that agility, right? If you don't have controls, you can just go and burn money in like if not days, even hours, right? So I think having a very fundamentally strong cloud team in house, a lot of companies, what they do is they outsource it, right? Give it to a vendor, and then you don't have a clue what they're doing, and then before you know that, the bills are really running high, because all these vendors have also incentives to,
Correct.
the bigger the bills, the bigger the payouts, right? So I think the fundamental for being a cloud native company, which is what most of the startups are today, is to understand how cloud operates, right? So for example, when we run our workloads, all the instances are designed in a way that when the work is done, they shut down automatically. They scale down, and when the workload increases, they start scaling up. So how do you do all of that requires a deep understanding of how cloud tech works, and just outsourcing this problem to a vendor without really understanding the fundamentals is where the gap is. Number one. Number two is not everything is designed for cloud, right?
That's
For
an
example,
important
if I have a monolith app, my architecture does not support cloud. So so look at it like this. I have an application that's running the entire sales to booking to sales, right, for me, and say operations as well. And if I have to scale certain components of my ERP, say if it's Diwali season, right? Now Diwali season, if I have to, my booking increases. So my number of trucks possibly would be the same. I might add a little more capacity, because we always, build the supply chain with capacity to handle the peaks, right? So there is always 15-20% buffer, and we engage market vehicles when there is really excess peak, Diwali, some big billion day sale or something like that, right? So now in this situation, if it's a monolith environment, if you just want to increase your booking piece, because a lot of people who are really putting data or making bookings, you have to scale up the whole application.
Okay.
You can't really scale that component.
Correct.
Because it's a monolith system. It just goes up together and comes down together. When you look at a microservices architecture, which is really designed for the cloud, which is how an Amazon.com works or a Netflix works, you've not seen a Netflix go down, but you still see new features.
Correct.
So there's no magic happening, right? It's working in an architecture that supports it, that's designed for the cloud. So if your application is not really designed for it, and you're just moving it for the sake of it, again, you might want to move it because of the business continuity.
Correct.
Because your hardware is really aging, and you feel that it's better there. I'm willing to spend more for the to reduce my downtime. That's a different story. So you are consciously making that decision that I'm ready to spend more, right? But the other thought is that if I'm not, my architecture is not designed like that, then you'll end up spending more money on the cloud.
Correct. Important point. That's very important point. And one thing you mentioned was cybersecurity. So how much, like everybody, whenever we discuss security, so that's very, I think, very dangerous or touchy topic, I would say. So because nobody knows till what time you are secure, like how much you are secure. So nobody knows. So how you ensure that your infrastructure is secure, especially in this era when everybody is using device of their own network of their own. So how you're ensuring that you're safe?
So, I mean, within the organization, I'm proud to say that we have a very good security team. We have a CISO who really understands it very well, and the whole team and it's at a group level. So, so I think, as you rightly said, what is enough in security is very hard to define. No one can define that, right? Because you've seen Microsoft's getting hacked, and you've seen Facebook's getting hacked.
Cybersecurity company,
right? And they spend billions, right? So, so it's not a function of money. It's not a function of talent. I think it's like one of those things, right? If you lose one gap in the system, and the hacker is smart enough to penetrate, then no matter what you're doing, you just kind of really not protected. But again, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything. So if you look at our landscape, most of the security tools that we are running are all AI enabled in the last 2 years, right? Because the kind of alerts we would get would be thousands in a day, and I have a lean team. It's not that we have 100 people in security, right? So AI really helps you to filter out what's a positive and what's a negative, what requires a human deeper dive, and what is something that the AI engine can itself filter, right? So that has really come to an aid. So that gives us a larger landscape to look at. Otherwise, you'll always have an alert backlog, right? So you don't know you missed an alert yesterday, and that becomes a vulnerability for you after a week. The second aspect, I think, is again about fencing, right? So how do you ring fence your infrastructure, your landscape, whether it's your, and generally it's the end devices, so your endpoints, right? So in our environment, a lot of that is controlled through Citrix. So most of the terminals are dummy terminals. So we spend a lot of tech around the core engine or the core servers, right? So the penetration is really less, or gets filtered out before it even reaches there. But that's a controlled environment. But now, effectively, we'll be moving from to a cloud on the ERP side. So that's going to be a different story. How do we ring fence that? Requires certain set of technologies that obviously we're going to put in place. But overall, to your question, I think there is no right or wrong. You can say I've done these 10 things, and then you can have this 11th thing that you've not done. Like you said, work from home, work from anywhere. You can harden devices, but then people find ways of not using it, or excuses. If you give one exception in the system, that exception itself becomes vulnerability, right? I'm the managing director. How can you stop my, right? So if you give an exception, that to me, that device is vulnerable, right? So you, I think, have to balance it out for you to get a good night's sleep.
So
In
one
my
thing,
way.
this just asking one more question, like one of the important thing is business continuity in case of any cyber attack. So what is, how you're prepared for that? Like, because you cannot, as you said, there is no silver bullet to it that you'll do this 10 things and you'll stop it. But what most important is how fast you can come back. So how you are planning that?
So I think in our case, it was a blessing in disguise to have a security attack, and now we have a very hardened process. So we do VAPTs every quarter. We do a overall security readiness drill every year, generally with one of the big fours, which means that tomorrow you're attacked. You don't want your CIO to be in the calls with the board. Who is the person in command, right? So there's a defined person in command. It could be a CFO, it could be anyone. Then what is an operational person in command, right? How would you run the operations? Who is the communication person in command? Who will communicate to the internal people, to the external stakeholders? Because you don't want the tech to start getting calls, because then if they are handling that, then who's going to handle the attack, right? So all of that is very structured. And then we have a business continuity plan, which is actually tested every 6 months.
Okay.
Right? Which means that we do a DR drill where we cut the primary system and we bring the secondary up, right? In few minutes. And we run the secondary for few days and then revert back. So it's a functional DR. So a lot of companies, what they do is, in my experience, and this is for Fortune 500 as well, they have a DR in paper. And when actually a disaster happens, that thing won't work.
They're not prepared for it.
Right? So you would feel, oh, this is not working. Now the servers are not taking the load. So when I had started in one of the organization, they had a DR. It was fabulous. Everything was there.
On the paper.
On the paper. even otherwise. Technically it was there.
Okay.
And then the disaster happened. It was not an attack, something else happened. We had to switch. When we switched, we realized that the hardware was not designed to handle the loads. Right? So there are now people who are waiting for 2 days, and you say, hey, this is up now, go. And then everyone's logging in, and the system is choking. And then we figured out it's not really designed to handle these volumes, right? And no matter how much server we put to it or CPUs we put to it, it was not able to handle. Because on a typical day, this was distributed, right? The workload was always distributed. Someone will come in the morning, afternoon, evening. Now everyone's waiting, so they're just waiting. It's like an airline, right? Our flight is delayed. Now everyone gets impatient. So now it's not designed to handle it. So we realized really the DR is not really the DR. We got to do something with the application, not just the hardware. And that obviously we did a project and fixed that because it was not able to handle that kind of connections, and the pooling mechanism and the caching mechanism was not good enough. Right? So sometimes you discover some of these things the hard way, but I think having a functional BCP is really, really fundamental in my view.
Another thing that you mentioned, like touched almost, that I'm the managing director and I need to, how can you block my access or, ask for password or maybe thumb impression. So coming from a very traditional company, because shipping is very traditional, as you said that, you used to be the paper checks and everything. So now how much, they are evolved, like as a personal level, that I need this technology as a business, not as a support mechanism, or cyber security as a business, not seeing it as a cost. So how you see the management thought changing over the period of time, especially in your sector?
So I can talk about the current organization because I think the cyber was obviously the last piece you want to spend money on, right?
Correct. Security.
Until the attack happened. And I think the cost of that was millions of dollars, right? Customer retention, everything, right? The credibility. So I think that itself was an awakening call, and that just made people understand the relevance. And from then onwards, I think our chairman is also very visionary from that point of view. And every project that we do, the first question is around security. Right? So obviously we've really spent a lot of money. We've really hardened that whole process, and the whole knowledge, I think, and the understanding of the importance of security is at the leadership level and even down below. And we make sure that there's always a weekly, article or something that goes out to keep educating people, because people have short memory, especially in corporate.
Correct.
Right? So they forget, hey, that was 4 years back. Why do I still need to spend so many, millions of dollars on this? So I think that is there in this organization. Traditionally, if I talk about other organizations, it's again a function of, what is that understood by the board, right? If the board is really conscious about security, I think it percolates down. If they are themselves, not really faced it and don't understand the relevance, then it's a constant battle for the CISO or the CIO to keep asking for money. Hey, I need to do this project.
Must be challenging in like traditional companies, because for any new age company, technology company, the management is well aware of the use of technology and how it is going to be.
So I would say it's not really a function of new age, old age. So if you look at it, I've been lucky enough in the previous organization too. My managing director was a young guy, right? So he understood the importance of security. So I hardly recall if I had gone to him and he would have said, no, why are you spending money on security? So, but if I look at it even otherwise, like look at the startups. I don't think they spend enough on security. They don't even understand it, right? Because I do a lot of startup mentoring. When I ask them security, hey, security, sir, we'll look at it later.
Yeah, this is one thing which I keep on hearing, that whenever you went to someone, so you say, okay, yeah, all whatever you are saying is very important. Let's do it next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Because next year we'll have some budget for this, and probably business will reach there, and we'll have some money, so we'll spend. Nobody knows how and why it is going.
Correct.
When it's going to happen.
And then startups is very true, right? Because they are limited budgets.
Startup budgets, limited budget. The key focus area, because I am also a startup, so I know the key focus area is to have some business rather than just spending on.
But I've seen couple of startups, not couple, at least two. I won't name them. That the whole idea failed because they didn't think about security. Their application was down for 3 days, and they lost all the customer base. Then they had to rebrand, and now I don't know what they're doing.
Because you doesn't only lose
credibility.
You lose credibility, and that, and you can make business, you can acquire customer, but the credibility lost is lost.
Because people were doing online payments. It was like like you could buy stuff from those startups. And when you saw that, you would be fearful to kind of put your credit card details in a company like that. So it was totally wiped out actually for them.
And one thing you said that AI is helping you keeping your team lean, and that is a big discussion these days, whether AI will eat jobs or it will upskill people, or how it is going to happen. Like people had different debates on subject, opinion. What is your thought on it?
My thought is, when computer came, did you see the jobs going down?
No,
Not really, right?
and that is what
So,
I'm side of debate also. Like you see, there were used to be a ghoda gadi before. Then came the
yeah,
auto
it's part of
rickshaw,
evolution.
cars, evolution. I think people then Ola and Uber when came, people thought that a lot of jobs will be lost. I think there are more taxis now than auto, and people who were smart enough started driving taxis, and they then bought
No,
taxis
look
and
at Zomato, look
correct.
at some of the other food companies, Blinkit and all. In my view, they're really big job creators, right?
Correct.
A person who's uneducated can now make a good living.
Yeah. I speak to a
So,
lot of people.
so there's always, I think, the technology will keep on evolving. Right? You and I can't stop it, right? So whether we like it or not, jobs will go or not, jobs will get augmented, in my view, right? So they always do. They always do, right? And the next big thing probably is already there, right? Knocking at our door. But if I look at technology per se, when I started 2 decades back, I've seen the industry grow and grow and grow. More tech creates more tech problems. You need more people to solve them, right? Now, if you didn't have a laptop, you didn't have a Microsoft Excel or whatever
Correct,
you use
correct.
for Outlook, your life was simple, right? It was a piece of paper, maybe write a
And
letter.
once you're left office, there's nobody's
Yeah.
bothering
So
you also.
now you're in a constant state of doing something, and if things are not working, you'll need to have support people or some kind of a technology help. And that's why most of the companies that are cross 200 odd will have a dedicated support IT, internal IT, right? So I don't think AI is going to eat them. I think it's going to make the workforce evolve, which means that maybe our children uh, would probably eat and breathe AI, right? So everything is being done by the system, the mundane stuff, and then probably they are doing something which is beyond that, right? So and also look at it from a social perspective. I think from a healthcare point of view. So if I look at the industries, I think it's got more positive than negative. Predicting cancer before 2 years before you really get it, to me is a bold statement that a human cannot do, no matter what you
You
do.
just take a picture and then it will predict.
Yeah, so I was a part of the Watson team when we did healthcare, right? And we were running Watson to actually analyze all the different radiology, X-rays, and all of that, right? And I think this was like long time back, right? It was at a stage where it could actually predict a tumor a year in advance, right? So to me, that's a big. It's nailing it at the bud before, or cancer for that matter. So I think, or imagine that if someone just takes my X-rays and figures out, hey, your trend of your cell biological structure is changing and it's moving towards a carcinogenic
Correct. I think it's
structure.
on a
Yeah.
larger level because, especially in the field of medical, so we don't have many doctors. We are not producing n number of doctors. There is stagnancy, not growing demand and supply chain. So with use of technology like AI especially in cancer or any healthcare, so it will have a larger impact and it will reach to a lot of people effectively. For example, if you have a mobile app, like maybe at the PHC level someone is not able to identify whether it's cancer or not, so take a picture, upload it, and it will tell you, so the person who's basic let's say not pro in that thing, they'll also tell you like whether he has cancer or not, and you'll get early treatment and detect. So I think this is going to change.
It's going to change because if you look at it, when you go
In
to
a
a
very
physician,
positive way, yeah.
so if you go to a physician today, he'll typically ask you a few questions, right? Check your fever, pulse, maybe blood pressure, which is something that's on your watch today,
Correct.
right? Or you have a machine to do it. Now, if I could enter that, I could have a conversation with the AI bot who's asking me these questions. Hey, do you have fever? Yes, I do. Are you getting shivers in the night? Yes, I do. And it's isolating, right? So your first, treatment, not for the advanced diseases, but your, the general flus of and all that we, seasonally get. All of that can be actually sorted, right? And again, there's aspect of compliance and whether medical board will approve or not. That's a different story. But if that can be done by assistant, and then a doctor looks at it and says, hey, now I don't need to spend 10 minutes. Within a minute, I can say this.
Correct.
This course of treatment looks okay. So he just stamps it, and the medicine, you know what to eat now, right? Now look at it the other way. That's my experience, right? The doctors ask you to do a lot of these tests. to take a 20-page report, how much time do they take to look at it? They don't even flip all the pages. Not because they don't want to, probably because there's so much pressure. There are 40 patients waiting outside.
Correct.
So most of the times, how do you know the diagnosis he's doing is really good? And AI cannot do it better. So I think, especially in a country like ours, where, as you said, 1.3 billion people, doctors are not enough. The cost of medicine is going up. There are fundamental big problems that AI can solve, right? So to me, it's not going to displace jobs, it's going to augment jobs.
Coming back to the original discussion, so how you are using AI apart from this cybersecurity? What are the other use cases of AI where you see that this is success?
So if I look at AI, for example, we use a lot of computer vision within AI, which means that I can say read an invoice and I can extract all the elements and I can create a docket directly. So no one needs to punch the data. So consignor information, consignee information, GSTN number, all of that, right? So that process takes a while. And the bigger problem is not the speed, just the speed, but the accuracy of data. Now, when we give an app to a pickup person, these are not like a lot of them are not even graduates. So their first instinct is to just put the bare minimum. So if pin code is there, they can punch any 5 pin codes. I don't really know, right? So the accuracy of data is really, really important for us. We have been struggling with it for a long time. A part of it was solved by GSTN when government went live with e-Waybill. So now we connect to the e-Waybill and we are able to pull the data from the government portal to create a docket on the fly. But the problem is even that data is not accurate. But the most accurate data that you will get from a customer about the consignor and the consignee is on the invoice. Okay. Because that's where they'll get the money, right? Okay. So now this tech, what it does is you can just, there's a mobile app, you can scan the invoice, it can create a docket on the fly. So my consignee address becomes accurate. So now when the shipment reaches the delivery gateway, people are not struggling to figure out, hey, who's this consignee? I don't know. Address is not clear. What is the pin code, right? Because it's now accurate and he can deliver. So the delivery cycles reduce because of the accuracy of data. Also using this data, then we can do a lot of other stuff. If you want to do route planning, if you want to do the, route optimization, all of that can happen. A lot of companies talk about it, but without data, they really cannot do it. The algorithms are very simple, but the problem is with the data, right?
And that to write data.
Yeah, that to write data. So I think this AI itself is not going to solve it. So this is the computer vision piece. And then to manage it, we have implemented a master data management tool, which probably in this industry, we're the only one, right? And given my experience with other companies, I just felt that this is required because if data is the gold mine, then data needs to be reliable. Correct. Right? For you to...
The gold has to be pure.
Gold has to be pure, right? Otherwise, all your inside is going to be just down the drain. So that we use a MDM by a company called TIPCO, which is used by a lot of Fortune 500 companies. So what it does is it, all the actual masters are now getting closer in terms of, the reliability of data, right? So all of them are hygiened and matched very accurately. And there's a whole mechanism on that workflow. So if a new customer is added, until it's vetted properly and committed, it doesn't become a golden copy. And once it becomes a golden copy, it flows down to different systems, right? So that's how the whole architecture is designed.
Like 5 years down the line, because technology is evolving very fast, AI is also getting into a larger discussion role. Cybersecurity is, becoming dangerous every day. So how you see your sector evolving 5 years down the line in terms of technology only, and how it is going to impact the business?
I think it's going to impact the business big. 5 years is a long period. Generative AI itself, we have certain, not use cases, these are live examples where we're using generative AI, right? For example, today we could look at our sales data and you can ask a question and the Gen AI engine will actually build a graph for you and give you insight, right? So it's happening, right? So I don't need a fancy, now a very complex data lake or a data warehouse. A lot of that I can do on the fly because then cloud is giving me the power to have scale compute, where I can do calculations on the fly, which is not possible earlier. And Gen AI is giving me the capability to actually understand the data, talk to the data, and then build visualizations and summaries, which can actually help you in terms of managing your business. It's like if I today want to see which country is doing well, 180 countries, right? It's not easy. I don't want to see the things that are okay, countries that are doing good. I don't really want to read through them. I want to see as a leader, where is the problem? Which countries are falling behind? What needs to be done? Is there some insight that I can be given? If I do a country review, it's going to last me a day or a day and a half. Can that be done by a AI workhorse, right? So that's one. And then Gen AI itself, I think, is so powerful that it can change everything for you, right? So for example, your whole process of how do you do a quotation, right? An email comes in from a customer. Now in our industry, all of that is still emails. Although we have a digital front called EQ360 where customers can directly book shipments through mobile app. But again, the adoption depends on the readiness of the customers, right? So a lot of that is still emails. They'll send you the shipping instructions. I'm sending this. This is hazmat. This has to be stocked low. This cannot be. You have to keep it this way, that way, whatever, right? So all of that is coming in shipping instructions. They're complex, right? So some human interpreter is looking at it, entering data. Now with Gen AI, I can really understand it. Go look at the contract of that customer and say, hey, for this customer, the shipping, the rate applied for this line of service has a 20% discount. So right now a human is doing it, right? So and obviously helped by the system. Now that could be done on the fly, right? And imagine if you're spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Spending 2 minutes.
Yeah, so if you're doing 10 shipments a day, you could do 500 a day, right? In terms of capacity, with the lesser number of people, with more data accuracy, right? With a faster turnaround. So all of that is going to change the game everywhere in every industry, in my view. 5 years you're going to see massive changes in how tech is going to shape businesses.
So there are a lot of startups are also coming in the B2B tech space, offering different innovative services. So when you speak to them, what are the from the startup point of view, what are the services or what understanding or tech they need to work with as large as company as yours, as complex as company as yours? So what are the things you look into at startup before acquiring or hiring their services?
So I've been a part of the startup ecosystem for a long time. I think some of the few big startups today, I won't name them, started from my office. The founders, especially in the logistics space, and the way we work with them. See, so if you look at a startup, they try to solve a part of the problem.
Correct.
One problem. Generally, you don't have startups that are doing the whole end-to-end leg for you, right? Because that itself is really at a very large scale, building ERPs, and it's very complex as well, right? Because they have to solve a problem and they have to solve it in a way that it fits into most of the businesses or whatever sector that they're targeting. They're targeting logistics. Then if they're trying to solve the last mile, then that last mile should work for all the B2Bs. Even if you look at D2C or B2C as separate, because they're very different ways in which the three markets operate. So it should be able to solve that problem for that particular line of business and for that domain, right? So those are the startups that we look at. When we're looking at a startup, we look at a problem that we feel is really not that complicated for us to solve, but requires time and energy and effort. And can that be done through a startup as an accelerator, right? And we could then invest in that startup or just have them continue or use that as a solution until we build our own. Okay. Right? So that's the way we look at startups, and also we engage with them on some of the new age tech, but a lot of times because we work with big partners, say Amazon or say IBM and a lot of these companies, so they themselves have these incubator labs where they bring the startups that can solve a problem. So that makes the job a little easier. Instead of me scooting 100, I have, say, Amazon, who already runs a startup incubator program, who can then tap into their thousands of startups and tell me, hey, Kapil, these are the 5 that fit your problem, right? And then they have their skin in the game because they're looking at the spend on their cloud, and then they're also willing to fund a lot of these startups in a way. So I think it's a mix of that we use so that we are not really burning money. We are leveraging our existing, big relationships with the tech companies to get the filter out the right startups that can do the job for us.
At the same time, there are a lot of job crunch in the IT sector as well. Like we have been reading, there are a lot of even IIT students are facing that challenge. I am students are facing challenge. So if any student who's just starting is looking for an opportunity in IT company or a large MNC in the IT department of the large MNC, what are the capability or skills he or she has to have so that he or she gets hired?
So I think a lot of the courses, because we have, so our chairman is also the chairman of IIM Bombay, right, which was NEETI earlier. So he helped, get that to an IIM Bombay now. So we do speak to a lot of the students there. I also hold a lot of workshops and some of the events we sponsor as well. So I think the curriculum nowadays that most of these colleges are doing, if I compare it to my time, is already is incorporates Python, AI, and a lot of that. And then when we take some of these students as freshers into some of our programs. Every year we take few freshers. The challenge that I see is that it takes 6 to 8 months for them to really become productive. So they have the theoretical knowledge, but the practical knowledge is missing. So I would say if you're really struggling to find a job, right, and you have some time and you know the programming language, so obviously you need to have a backend. So any database, maybe an open source, say a Postgre or something, and then understanding of a front end. So if you could, just hone your skills, become a full stack, right, while you're waiting for the right opportunity, and also pick up an interesting project, right, that you can showcase. So when we interview the kids, then it helps if you can differentiate, right? You can say, hey, I built this, and here is a demo, here is a phone, see the app that I built, versus someone just giving you a rundown of his academic qualification and the projects. So I think you got to figure out ways to distinguish yourself and also be ready. So if you could do a hands-on project, right, that could incorporate whatever technologies that you've learned, so that you learn the nitty-gritties of it, and then maybe you get a 3-month head start, if not 6.
One of the things that I've witnessed that theoretically all the things are there, maybe he's coding his code, everything is good, but they lack the understanding of business, any business. I'm not saying that you understand every, but anything you build, you don't have student these days, they don't have the capability or capacity to ask, or maybe they're not taught in that way that how this X, for example, you learn cloud, right, for example, or learned AI. So how that is going to impact your business? That one thing is missing. I think that is the colleges and especially teachers in colleges, they have to, okay, you are doing cloud, but how it is going to translate into business? Because that is one key question that everybody has. Whatever your activity you're doing, how that is going to impact anything, business, financially, commercially, operation wise. I think that is missing.
That is missing. So I don't know. I mean, we are trying to do our bit. So if you look at IIM Bombay or some of the other colleges that we work with, we are trying to, we run a program where some of our senior business analysts go. So there are some problems that we carve out for students to solve, right? Suppose, because we always have a plethora of projects. So some of the good ones, not the really low hanging ones, we pick them and we say, hey, can you guys solve for this? And to solve for this, we give them business knowledge. So we tell them, this is how a shipping instruction looks like. This is what we do in the system. This is how the ERP looks. Now, can you create a piece of software that can actually, say, read a document and then auto-populate this form for me? So give them a simple problem to solve, which has a defined outcome, right? And in that process, they understand the domain and the business, not the whole thing, but a part of the business, right? So that's something that we are trying to do, to bring the industry connect and get them a little closer to the actual world, right?
Business part of
Yeah.
it. So last question of the day, what is your dream project? Like anything you have thought of that this is you want to do?
Dream project. I have a dream job.
Aspirational project, maybe you're thinking that this will define you probably.
Yeah, so aspirational. So I'm a pretty creative guy that way. So the mind is always working. So whenever I look at a business problem, sometimes it's daunting too, right? So whenever I say go abroad, like I was in US some time back, and then Europe as well. So you go to the floor, you see the operations, and then you're questioning, why is he doing this, right? So I think the dream would be to probably get some time out and orchestrate a solution that can at least be utopian in my view, right? Because no matter what tech I see, we do the improvement, but then I see there's more to do. There's more to do. There's always that more. There's a hunger for more. So can you really create something where, as an
But is
individual,
it
I feel that probably this is the best that can be done out there, right? Again, I maybe
this is a very principally maybe that utopian society we talk in papers and all, but it fundamentally level it is like it could be there on the paper, but in the society we haven't able to achieve that. But technology is very fast evolving. Like society is evolving still very slow pace, but technology is very fast evolving. So is it possible even that there?
No, that's what I'm saying. So, as I said, it's a utopian dream, right? So, maybe 10 years back, what I thought would be ideal is now a norm. Right?
Correct.
Everyone's doing it. What I'm thinking is going to be ideal right now, in maybe 2 years, like you said, 5 years. Maybe in 2 years it becomes a norm, right? So yeah, it's in this space it's very hard to do in this profession. As you said, it's just evolving massively, and now with quantum coming into the picture, I think that's going to change the whole game. Maybe give a supercomputer to all of us. So that's really going to redefine the whole humanity, in my view, if that happens. So yeah, as I said, it's a dream. So not all dreams are supposed to come true. So I don't leave it to that.
Okay, thank you, Kapil. It was nice speaking to you
Thank
and
you.
Listening your thoughts, especially how your shipping industry work, how technology is evolving segment.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.